Good morning, Richard.
Hey, good morning, Stephen. How you doing? How you doing?
I'm doing. I'm Stephen Powell. I'm here with Richard Banks with Prefecture Go Academy, and today we are going to do the next part of our series called Agriculture and Water. It's part of our series of Circular Living. So as we enter our conversation here, we've been talking about power grids. We've talked about networks and infrastructure, and now we're talking about agriculture, which I find was one of my favorite topics about this entire thing, because there's so many cool things that I have been reading lately, Richard, about robotics helping with agriculture, improvements in agriculture, sustainability in agriculture, and different steps that we're going to see in the future that are just at its very infant level that will help us grow more food in a smaller space for our growing on Earth population, I'll say. So I know we've talked briefly about these topics, before, but let's start off. What do you think of the current state of agriculture now, before we get into our circular city?
That's a good question on the spot here. I see a
mixture.
Well, I see a mixture of. I learned from you yesterday that the expensive combines and the equipment and we talked about yesterday. I mentioned the philosopher from the 1800s, Thomas Malthus. And he didn't predict that we would have. He was a philosopher, and he didn't predict that we would have all the sophisticated. At that time would have been tractors and even oxen and all that stuff and better fertilizer and better ways to do soil and stuff. He didn't foresee that in his time, so he predicted that we would run out of food, and he predicted wrong because he didn't know what he didn't know. So it was very interesting. So that's the same thing we're in, is that. Where's that balance of the technology that's supposed to help us and save us to there's going to be 8 billion, maybe 9 billion people before the end of the century. How are we going to feed all these people? But then you hear about and something we didn't talk about, but maybe controversial, but the balance between the haves and the have-nots. So, and some people would say that, especially in America, is that we have enough food. We have enough food to feed everybody. It's just access to food and the cost of food. So we have, just like we have enough homes for the homeless. It's just access to homes and access to this. That's controversial depending on what side you're on. We're not here for that. But if that's true, then how do you get to that point? And how does technology help us, and AI and drones and stuff? And we could yield. And what I love about learning about hydroponics is, if you're talking about needing soil, you don't. There's three, and then we'll talk about the three elements of hydroponics. There's the hydroponics, and then there's aquaponics and aeroponics, which is very interesting. And it's all soilless. Basically, there are three technologies that use soilless farming. So, yeah. And but like I said, with any new technology, the farmers don't want to change what they're doing now because of the expense until they have to. So when do you do that? So how do you save the environment and be sustainable, but not wreck a whole industry of, So.
There's a ton to unpack here. So let's start off with the expense of the equipment and everything, because that was sort of one of the parts where we started, and also perspective. Perspective is a huge thing. So perspective of your current moment and where you think you're going in the future is a huge indicator or challenge, depending on how you look at it, on how you view how we feed a population. So controversial, like you said, how do we feed a growing population? I think we said with 7.5 billion people on this planet. We know that everyone has food in every country. We know there's lots of people that are going hungry, but yet we can't produce enough food for those people and of course it's getting to them, and whether it's still going to be fresh, et cetera, et cetera. But if we look at our current technology and say, oh, how do we feed all those people if we have 9 billion? You know, we have 10 billion, if we 12 billion and 14 billion. And I know that the growth rate of the human population globally is exponential. You know, I think as we were chit-chatting yesterday, I said, hey, I think we're around 4 when I was born, maybe even 3. I didn't fact check it. Sorry.
Yeah.
But which leads me to the disclaimer: we are not experts at these topics, right? So please comment. You know, we would like to hear you guys. You know, correct us or give us some other insights or give us your perspective. But you know, when we look at it, you know, we have all these different new technologies emerging, and it gives you hope to say, hey, how do we can grow that much food? We do have enough space if you look at it in a different way. If you were back in the early 1900s, you might say, well, we don't have enough land to grow all this food, you know, because we weren't as efficient at growing it in the space we have. Now we're coming to places where even with efficiency, we have to make changes because we've sort of harmed the environment and our growth of agriculture, not just plant agriculture, but also animal agriculture and livestock for, you know, creating other products like chicken and beef and, you know, pork and etc. So, you know, I think you're right. You know, people now may not see how we're going to be able to produce for more people down the road. We'll get to the whole, you know, circular city and or space type production of food, you know, which is a huge unknown still. But looking at like some of those technologies like combines, you know, they're very expensive. Again, I didn't fact check this. I think they're anywhere from, you know, 250,000 to almost $1 million. It depends on the type of machine, the size. You know, that's one piece of equipment. Farmers have huge debt and expense to grow food for us. And to a point where some farmers share equipment, some farmers help with harvest, and other farmers help with planting. You know, they sort of work together to accomplish a goal because of that cost burden. And for us to say, hey, there's a more efficient way of doing this, and why I'm so excited about this topic with some of the new things we've seen, like pesticides. There's a drone, you know, that now travels along, you know, the farm fields and zaps with a laser the weeds. Now, you know, 7,000 weeds. I think it was 7,000 weeds a minute. Is that what I told you? I believe. Mm-hmm. Or is it 7,000 weeds an hour? Either way, it's still pretty awesome. Mm-hmm. And this machine just goes along and just zaps these weeds. It knows the difference between the actual plant and the weeds. And there, we don't have to spend tons of money on chemicals. We're not putting chemicals in the ground. We're not spraying them on the plants. It makes our food more or back to being the original organic that we had, you know, back in the early 1900s, late 1800s in agriculture. So that's a huge positive, but I don't know what the price tag of that machine would be, but I bet it's going to be up there. And if it's, let's just throw a number out there just for argument's sake, let's say it's $100,000, you know, does that offset the price of the chemicals and the machines and the labor that it takes to go and do the pesticides? I don't know. But until that price and that cost of that type of machine becomes a lot more attainable, you won't see that shift, right? Mm-hmm. What was the other one? Oh, it's the little flying drones. Mm-hmm. I saw those yesterday before our conversation, and they were spraying something. I didn't really dig into what they were spraying. They could be spraying, you know, a herbicide. They could be spraying a pesticide, or they could just be watering the plants. Who knows? So they could be all the above, you know, which I think is kind of a neat thing. But, you know, there is emerging technologies to help make the farming process more efficient in we'll say a horizontal space. Mm-hmm. And we'll get to horizontal and vertical space here in a second. But, you know, once you've gone to a point, there's only so much land. And I keep seeing in conversations with, you know, people as I travel, you know, oh, there used to be land there. Now there's a building. Oh, that used to be a big farm field. Now it's a development. I hear it when I go to Indiana. I hear it when I travel across New York and in Pennsylvania. I've seen it in my own hometown where I grew up. You know, big farm fields have disappeared and became, you know, whole dorming facilities for the college there. So we have a choice. We either have a place to live or we have a place to eat, and we need both.
Wow.
So, and or any vertical farming, you know. So I am not as in tune with hydroponics and those other two that you mentioned. So I'll let you dive into that a little bit.
Okay, but getting in, just a sidetrack on the expense of the combines and how do you phase that in? It's interesting. There's companies like Cobalt and Universal Robotics that have equipment called Legacy. It's called Legacy Robots, where they'll use your existing technology. So they'll take your combine and basically, I'm just making this up. I don't know. I know that they have this for equipment, but I'm sure that in the future, to offset the cost, is instead of having a person inside the combine running it, you'd have a robotic or something that does the controls and just takes over and adds on to the existing technology you have to offset that cost. So you don't. So you at least you get the legacy of that equipment until it phases out. Then you can come in with the new phase of, oh, now we have a more sophisticated type of equipment. So but,
I think that the, you know, when you really get down to what equipment is, a combine's a combine. The actual technology to you know, to cut and separate, you know, corn, wheat, whatever, you know, that's whatever that machine's doing, isn't really going to change in that farming method. It's how does it get, you know, how does it navigate? So like even with the machine we were talking about, the zaps, the plants, it has the same stance and build as a regular agricultural sprayer container. You know, it has the same spread for the wheels. It has the same base, the same structure. So like, you're right. I mean, it is more as a retrofit, you know, maybe they take the whole cabin out and they replace it with an entire, like, you know, computer system that just, you know, drives the machine based upon GPS and everything like that, you know. So that's I think that would have its own, it would have a lower cost than buying a new machine. Absolutely.
Instead of starting all over, and replace it, enhance instead of replace. But to answer your question about their hydroponics, like I said, generally I know about the design and learning about it in the last couple of years. But hydroponics basically is soilless farming system to grow. It uses sophisticated pumping systems, and the water actually has nutrients that feed the nutrients to the root. So, and the other advantages of hydroponics is that you can have a smaller space and grow more yield than a traditional soil. So you can actually condense the root system and what you have, so you yield more in less space. That's an advantage. And like I said, it uses a pumping system, and it pumps nutrients and the fertilizer through the water. And it's used, of course, it uses technology and computers to monitor. And you can, it's done indoors, so it's controlled, and we don't have the problem with weeds with soilless. And you have, and it's temperature controlled, so you can be in a building that's run on solar or on the grid. That's the advantage. And another offset of that is aeroponics. Aeroponics I've learned probably in the last year. And aeroponics uses more, instead of pumping water, and that's the advantage of it. You can also do it vertical. But aeroponics uses air, moisture, water, and air to feed nutrients, and it's more expensive than hydroponics, and it needs more technology and more, and you have to do more controls and monitor it. But it produces the better yield because the actual water and nutrients is going directly. You're using air, you're using less water. You're using less water, and it actually goes to the root of the the plant or the crop you're growing, which makes you bigger strawberries, bigger tomatoes and stuff like that. But it's more expensive, more control. It needs more control, more. And the disadvantage of it, I was told, is that if the system's not monitored correctly, you could lose your yield, as opposed to just regular hydroponics, which gives you more time. And the newest one I learned from Lindsay's blog post, she wrote, Aeroponics. I didn't know about that. I just thought it was just a different version or a different brand name of hydroponics. But apparently, Aquaponics is the newest one I'm learning. I didn't know that was a thing. I thought that was a brand name, but aquaponics is actually using fish, the nitrates that fish produce, like in your fish tank. And what I've learned about it is that you still pump water through, but as opposed to regular hydroponics where you need to pump and filter clean water through it and monitor the nutrients. Generally, it's less. You need to do it less in aquaponics because you have fish in there. So you have fish there that creates nitrates, that creates but if it's too much nitrates, that's not good for the fish. But the nitrates that are used in it are used by the plants. So the plants use the nitrate, which cleans the water, which you have to filter the water less in aquaponics. But the disadvantage in cost is now you have to take care of fish. And some would say that not only you could sell crops with the aquaponics, but you can also sell fish in their offspring.
Right.
Depending on what side you're on, as far as, you have a fishery, but there are most people that say that the cost benefit isn't great for having both, trying to monitor, trying to manage a yield of crops and also trying to be like a fish market too. So yeah, so there, and also with that one, that one costs a lot too, because with expense and investment is because you have to monitor pH, and just like the aeroponics, you have to have sophisticated equipment to monitor it, because it's very sensitive as far as growing. So that's my only knowledge of it. Yeah, so
that's more knowledge than I knew. I didn't really dig into the last one too much yet, in the whole conversation. I think one of the benefits, and not every crop can be put into hydroponics or any of these other two, right? That's an important statement here. But by reducing the amount of plants that we have in farm fields, we now reduce, and also with some emerging technologies, we started reducing the runoff that we have from irrigation. That means we're not putting pesticides and herbicides into the water supply, which now is helping us improve our water supply. I don't know the actual statistic, but I know it's a significant amount of our water pollution actually comes from farms and from that runoff. We spray it on plants, we spray it on the ground. The ground doesn't necessarily absorb it as much as you think it does. We have a heavy rain, or we have to irrigate, which uses a lot of water too. So, there's a lot of positive things, because, and we aren't even touching this, but clean water is a really important thing for us all to survive as well in our city, and also, in our real life here. So, fresh water is only a small percentage of what we have as a plant that's majority of water, and making sure we keep that clean through some new technologies like hydroponics, so we're really helping two things, maybe more than two things, but two things happen, with these types of farming methods. It also gives the opportunity of freshness, right? We said, we have plenty of food, but it doesn't necessarily get to everybody. I could bore the whole audience with the whole history of how food got from point A to point B and the railroads and those things, but we'll save everybody from that agony and say, if it's closer to you, then it's fresher. And if you can make that happen more often, you now have a better option for a food supply. So a high-rise building that's completely dedicated to hydroponics and growing food in a city, or let's just, you know, or in a country that does not have necessarily the resources. I mean, it's like in a desert type scenario, it's always in drought, you know, they can't grow things because of their, you know, climate conditions.
Mhm.
An interior space it can help grow food where food was not able to be grown, and also help lower the transportation process, obviously get rid of a carbon footprint there,
Mhm.
um, by having a building that's close doing hydroponics. So there's a lot of pluses to this hydroponics
Mhm.
thing, or having food grown vertically in a space. So
Mhm.
vertical growing. Now, like I said, it doesn't cover everything. And it certainly doesn't cover our other favorite topic, livestock.
Oh yeah.
So Richard likes to tease me because he wants me to try some 3D printed meat.
Yes.
And I don't know how I feel about that yet, but you know, I think that Richard, you might be more courageous than I am on this.
Yeah. I discovered it because I thought I was arrogant in my Generation Xness in saying that when these young kids talk about sustainability and climate change and uh, how to you know how to solve these issues,
Hmm.
there's a group that also mentioned that we have to get rid of meat, and you know I love my steak, and just like yourself. And I said, well, you know, my it's my bias, but I said that we have to get rid of steak, you know. And I was reading about 3D printing technology, and there's an Israel company, and I think there's two other companies too in Europe. In Europe, like there's probably a bunch of them but there's three major ones that are trying to develop 3D printed meat. And what they do is they take the DNA from uh, the animal or the cow that produces it, and they break it up into three groups: the actual meat, the
Hmm.
actual fat, and the actual blood. And they actually make it that color, so it's so I'm tricked. And they actually print it on a 3D printer. It almost looks like you can look it up on YouTube, 3D printed meat. And there's like I said, there's an Israeli company that's far advanced right now. But what they do is they 3D print it in the machine that almost looks like Play-Doh, and
Hmm.
they actually color, and they actually layer it like it would be a steak, and they package it. And they said that it's more nutrient, and it's actually cheaper to do than the whole cow slaughterhouse thing. You can actually 3D print it, uh, and then you can actually cook it on on the grill or whatever. And it actually, they said that actually tastes like meat. So once it's out there, I want to try it, because I'm willing to meet the Gen X and the Generation Alpha in the middle. That okay, if you're going to take away my meat from me, at least replace it with something. And I would say to you, that's controversial, that you say, um, there are meats that I eat all week that are processed, that's probably not good for me, that I
Hmm.
eat willingly and lovingly, that probably not good. And this is, they say that they can make this more nutritious. So if you can think of it as healthy processed food, I don't know if that's possible. Is it like a vegan? Is it like a vegan
Hmm.
patty or a turkey meat or whatever? As
I
long
mean,
as
there's
it doesn't
turkey
have.
bacon, and we know how that's made. So I mean,
So if it's not processed, I'll meet this generation in the middle and say, okay, we won't kill any cows, and we won't produce any more farm animal livestock, as long as I can have my chicken and meat and
mhm.
fish 3D printed. We're together. So give me
Well,
challenge. So
I, I
yeah.
I think I can say there's some positives here, right? Although, you know, the proof's in the pudding,
Mhm.
no pun intended here, right? So the thing is that let's say let's pick chickens. Chicken's a great example. You know, for you to have a plate of chicken wings, you know, if you have a dozen, you're really killing three chickens, one person. You
Mhm.
know, so when you start thinking in that way, and of course, chicken is processed in other ways. And a lot of people don't realize the meat processing process. A lot of animals, specifically with cows, you know, you'll see them in fields all over the country. And the larger farmers will take those cows, put them on a truck, haul them off to the Midwest. They get fattened up for another 200 pounds,
Mhm.
you know, so they're prime in the minds of the packaging companies. Obviously, they go through the slaughter and processing, and then it gets sent back, you know, to the grocery stores. So you might have, pick on Florida, you might have a cow in Florida that goes all the way out to Texas to turn around, come back, package as steaks or ground beef or, brisket or whatever, sitting in your local store. It's made this huge trip. It's spent a lot of time on trucks. It's taken a lot of extra resources, where in your kind of, what you're explaining as a new emerging technology could replace that. And you are what you eat. So going back to our previous conversation, these cows are eating certain types of food. Those foods have been managed with pesticides and herbicides, and not every one of them is. Most meats aren't using clean food, organic food, if you will. So that's going in their bodies, which means it goes into their tissue, which goes into our bodies, and here we are, right? It's a full cycle. So back to what you're saying, you now have control of exactly what is going inside that meat, so that's a pretty impressive thing. I think that a lot of people, and going back into that progress and perspective, dialogue a little bit ago, it comes down to, does it taste the same way, and can people get over themselves? So it's kind of like someone that's, my younger kid's age is never really tried a steak. My youngest kid does not want to eat anything besides his 5 favorite food groups, grilled cheese, pizza, mac and cheese, as we joke. When he tries a steak, and if it's one of these, he would not even know any different.
Yes.
Versus someone else that tries a steak and then they try this and say, well, it does taste different, because it would taste different in some fashion, but so does 2 different cuts of beef.
Yeah,
too. Definitely. So back to our circular city, conundrum, we don't have a lot of room for cows.
No.
No. And so, fictitious or not, if we put our little dome on the moon or in Mars or whatever, they don't have room for cows either. And so I think that this is a huge benefit to solving a bigger problem. Like I said before, humans need to have the ability to have the same experiences. Although we've gone back and forth whether we can virtualize certain experiences that give them the same feelings and emotions from those experiences and an entertainment level. When it comes to eating, people really are grounded with what they eat and how they eat and how good it tastes and whatever. I'll pick on my mother. She lives in an assisted living facility, and the one thing that she talks about most any day of the week, if you call her, is what she ate. And when I look back on some of my other relatives that have aged, they talk about the same thing. It's the most important thing of their whole day, besides getting up and standing and be able to walk around. It's what I have for breakfast, what I have for lunch, what I have for dinner, and was it good? So if it wasn't good, we all hear about it. They didn't really do a good job with dinner. But if it's really good, they'll tell us, hey, it was really good. And so people, it seems to be a theme. We have to have something good to eat. And whether it's synthesized food or it's, legit came from a cow, I think that how it tastes and how it's prepared is a super important thing for people to feel grounded in their own humanity for now.
Yes.
For now.
Yes. So, yeah. Well, getting on our circular city idea, you want to talk about that right now?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, talking about this is like the third of the 5 things that we were talking about. Like Kaylee starts, we did the data, and then you have to have the power grid and the agriculture, water. We're talking briefly about the water system. The water system, the circular city is in the dome is in the center, and then you have streets that span out around it, and it's in 6 different sections. But the outer, in most circular cities, the outer part of the city is where the agriculture is. And you have a thing called the Go philosophy in Japan. Go means 5. So for sustainability purposes for the city, you have the best 5 things that you create, so you don't create overabundance or not enough. You get at least a choice of the top 5 stuff that goes into Kaylee. And like I said, as far as the water system goes, there's a man-made water system that goes around the outside circular outside of the system. And it can either come through a land from natural water that comes in from like a bay, or in our case would be Tampa Bay. You feed it into that, and as it's being fed in, you can use dams and derricks to control it, and that's part of the hydroelectricity system on as it comes in, but it goes circles around the city, and that water can be filtered, and it's partially underground, the water system of clean water, gray water, and water, and that's circulated. Gray water is for the hydroponics, and then the black water can be recycled out, filtered. But you can, and there are actually black water and gray water that you can actually use for fertilizer and nutrients for plants too, once it's gone through a process. So that's the water part of it there. But as far as the outside the city, you would have 5 different farming technologies. We mentioned just regular hydroponics buildings. Then you can have the aeroponics, and then you can have the aquaponics. You can combine that in the natural water system, or create ponds, or in that circular water system that's there. And you can add the aquaponics, and you do still have to have, and then you can have a hybrid of all those 3 things. And the 5th would be, you still have to have regular soil, because you mentioned, and I just learned this a couple of nights ago. I never thought about asking the question, but it just came up on Google when I was trying to study for this podcast. There are things that don't grow well, and there's not a cost benefit to grow, like potatoes, any rutabagas, and corn grows in ground. So you do it so the outer perimeters of our circular city, you still have to have some soil if you do want to have carrots or things that don't grow well. Heavy fruits don't grow well in hydroponics in any class. And like I said, the cost benefit, because bigger fruit and bigger watermelons and melons and stuff, and vine fruits don't grow well because they sprawl. So it's not a cost benefit to grow it in hydroponics. So if you want those things, you still have to have some soil. So the 5th would still be soil until it can be phased out with newer technology. But you still have to have some soil. It's still, so you have those 5 things. And the process in our fictitious story for the circular city is that Kaylee gathers information and takes the 5 things you like, your wants. We talked about yesterday, your wants and your needs. So there are some dietary things that you need for your health, and there are some extra dietary dessert things and stuff you like that you want. So you do your top 5 of each, and it goes into the data, the Kaylee data center, and then it takes everybody in the populace, the information, and it calculates it, and it knows what to produce because of that populace in that city. We know what to produce. We know how many vegans there are, vegetarians. We know that people who have special diets or who are diabetic or have health issues, we know what to produce. So then that's how you build. Then that's how you would build the city. You build the city based on those needs and based on what grows best in what of the 5 technologies: hydroponics, aquaponics, aeroponics, or soil, or hybrid of that. And another another part of it of hydroponic is for herbs and vine one. You can actually grow in your own domain. So if you have a dorm or a house and you have a roof, or you can have your own personal garden that grows that to add on to that. And the whole idea is, and me and Steven talked about this yesterday. He doesn't like it, but I'm calling it for the circular city, and I want to know what you guys think of it. In the circular city, since it knows what to produce and it knows that you have dietary needs, and when you eat, because you're putting it in the system, what you like, when you like, how you like it. So the fictitiously the farm produces. So it knows that Stephen likes kale, kale and a steak at 12 noon. So since he knows that he eats at 12 noon, and that's his first meal because he's intermittent fasting, so he knows that. So since Kaylee knows that, and the system knows that, it knows what to produce. It knows how many. He knows that. So it goes out to the system, and the system knows that you have to produce this steak along with other people that like steak, other people that like kale, and the system produces it, packages it, and it can either go by transport or underground through some kind of transport, and it transports it to your home or to your work, wherever you're going to be, and it comes packaged at 12 noon so you can eat. So we have that. Yeah, so that's kind of so it actually, you avoid the whole supermarket store having to go get it and then put it in your refrigerator. You avoid all that, and I think it's more sustainable, but that's just my idea. But like I said, taking the best of futurist idea and seeing if it sticks. So yeah, and yeah. Oh, and then the thing that, well, you could talk about it. The thing that that Stephen doesn't like is he likes to still go shopping. And that's when we talked about last week, that's when the holodeck comes in. And that's why I told them the psychology is to separate, just like with the driverless vehicles, or if you like driving, is separate your needs from your wants. If you need food, then this is the better way to do it. But if you want food, you can go to the holodeck and have a culinary VR cooking class, or you can do that in your home, in your domain, to actually, because you like the fact of cooking, or you like the so we had talked about that. So that's the whole the plan for this third phase of what Kaylee does for our gaming platform, Circular City. What do you guys think? So
I think that, and as Richard said, there's parts of this I don't like, maybe because I'm just old and I like to cook my own food, and I like having what I want when I want it. But, I think that if I was brought into that more modern space, I would get used to certain things. I think that there's some positives that come along with that whole theory is coming back to like refrigeration, spoiling of food, waste. I mean, we throw out a lot of food as Americans. We're horrible. And that solves some of those problems. It solves some of the problems of needing to, for example, if I wanted to go make a steak and cheese right now, I'd have to go to the market and get, a pack of 6 rolls, a whole pound of, whatever cheese I want, of course, the steak portion, and any of the things I use, like the peppers, the onions. And now I have more things to make steak and cheese sandwiches than one person can directly eat, unless I'm making it for my whole family, and then that's a different story. We have entered a time where we have more young people not starting families as soon as what we did, as my generation or generation before that, so forth and so on, which means there's a lot more individual packaging that's done. There's a lot more individual, preparation. You can buy things in smaller quantities. Well, our version of smaller quantities is plastic. Different conversation for a different time, but that's a lot of waste. And that food, it takes a lot more energy to package food in smaller quantities than it does in larger quantities, what it comes down to it. But if it's, let's just say, we can pick on Henry, when he goes to his lunch, he gets them put in these containers, it has only a little this, a little that, a little this, and the container comes home. It's, it can be refrigerated, it can be heated, and it eliminates the plastic bag principle. So let's just say that type of, meal on a platter already portioned out, based upon what you should eat, comes to you, that becomes a more sustainable option, because the system's only producing the amount of food it needs to produce for that said populace, no more, no less. And it's only producing what that person is what those people are ordering, for that specific time. So it's very, 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 we'll say data accurate, and it makes people become healthier. People aren't overeating. People aren't being gluttonous. You know, we aren't having a lot of extra waste. We're not polluting as much. So although it sounds great on paper, you know, there's a huge line of space between that and where we are today. But I think, as we said when we started, perspective is an important thing, because folks that grow up in that would not know any different versus me now going and saying, okay, I'll have some soup. Now I'm going to have a steak. Maybe I have room for dessert. You know, probably is not the best thing for my health to have all that in one sitting, but I might do that at dinner time. So,
and to tag onto your whole packaging thing, you talked about it, is there's a emerging technology coming out too that it's edible plastic containers that you can put around food and package it in food, but since it's edible and safe. But I think what happens to it, there's other technologies that have it where if you heat it or boil it, it disappears, and then you're not creating any waste, but your food is still being preserved and sealed. Right. I like that.
I see that becoming a technology sooner or later for us now.
Yeah.
You know, plastic is not a sustainable direction for a lot of reasons. Although I am a big proponent of plastic for separating things out, and it does a great job. It's not, and as we'll say this a lot in a lot of our conversations, it's the solution for today. It's not the solution for tomorrow. And, you know, that's an important thing as we have all of our conversations, whether it's, you know, agriculture or water or power grids or technology like drones, or, you know, how we evolve as humans. We have a solution today that works really well, but it's great and it's good for us to look for technology for tomorrow, because the only thing we have to do is improve so that we can, you know, coexist in a more balanced way.
Yes.
Okay. I think that brings us to our time, doesn't it?
Yes. I would. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, let us know. We're setting the platform, but we want you to tell the story. So, and to also tag our biases and stuff like that. You know, like I said, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, you guys are going to take over. So you'll get to the point where you'll be telling us what to do. So, whether my steak or not, it's in your hands. So.
It's just positivity. Yes, hit that subscribe button. Let us know what you think. Like Richard said, comment. You know, send us an email. You know, tag us, or put comments in the social media channels that we have our videos in, and we will see you.
Thank you for watching our podcast. Subscribe to our channel. Let us know what you think and what you would like us to talk about next. Don't forget to check out our website at prefectureisp.com.